Today, we'll be exploring one of the most southern states in America, Mississippi. This state is rich in amazing places such as the Vicksburg National Military Park, a Civil War battle site, and Biloxi Beach, a perfect spot for coastal relaxation. Animal lovers will definitely appreciate the Marine Mammal Studies Institute. History and architecture enthusiasts will be captivated by the town of Melrose, which boasts many stunningly beautiful homes. Undoubtedly, the Biloxi Lighthouse is an excellent place for photography. But the brightest star of the state is, of course, the renowned University of Mississippi, commonly known as Ole Miss, where our story unfolds. During the summer, when academic activities on the university campus come to an end, it becomes especially quiet. The few students who remain over the summer attend extra lectures during the day or prepare on their own for the next academic year. In the evening, they invariably visit local bars and nightclubs. Among these students was Ellie Costel. She was an upperclassman and stayed on campus over the summer to improve her knowledge in certain subjects. Recently, she passed an important exam for her class, Introduction to Retail at summer school, and was planning to celebrate this with her friends. A small bar with pizza and daiquiris on Oxford Square is particularly popular among the youth, so it's always filled with people and resembles an eternal party. The dim light, loud music, and a rainbow selection of various drinks make it a place where bartenders know many of the customers by name. On the evening of July 19th, Ellie Costel met up with friends at this bar. They talked and had fun, but Ellie seemed tense and spent the whole evening messaging someone on her phone. Then, she had a couple of cocktails and discreetly left. This was one of the last places where Ole Miss student Ellie Costel was seen in public. On July 20, 2019, around 10:30 a.m. during their routine patrol, police officers discovered the body of a young woman. It was found near an abandoned fishing camp by Sardis Lake, approximately 30 miles from the university. At the scene, the victim was found with 9 gunshot wounds to her back. Investigators collected 11 shell casings at the scene. A purse containing a driver's license and a student ID belonging to 21-year-old Alexandria Costel, a University of Mississippi student, was found nearby on the roadside. Alexandria Costel, affectionately known by friends and family as Ellie, was born on September 11, 1997, in St. Louis, Missouri. A blonde-haired little girl, she grew up surrounded by the care and love of her mother, Cindy, and father, Keith. Her parents supported all her endeavors in learning new things. Ellie excelled academically and in sports, participating in track and field and golf. She loved adventures and traveling, but her dream was to attend the University of Mississippi. This special place, with its traditions and new student life, was her dream destination. Her dream came true, and she became a student at the legendary Ole Miss. Ellie lived in a dormitory in Oxford, Mississippi, and was popular among her peers. Friends and relatives praised Ellie, describing her as a lively and energetic person who greeted everyone with a smile. The tragic loss was a shock to the close-knit community of the lovely girl and her fellow students at the University of Mississippi. As investigators worked tirelessly to uncover the facts, Ellie's father confirmed the tragic news of her death in a Facebook post on Sunday. Yesterday, on Saturday afternoon, the Sunset Hills, Missouri police visited us and informed us that our beautiful Alexandria, our sweet Ellie, was the victim of a crime, wrote Keith Costel. She was attending summer school and taught fitness at the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi. She graduated from Lindbergh High School in 2016. She was just 21 years old. "We are deeply saddened," said the interim chancellor of the University of Mississippi, Larry Sparks, in a statement to Today, said, "Ellie was a valued member of our student community," Lafayette County investigator Jared Bunderin told CBS. On Saturday morning, a white female was found on the ground with multiple gunshot wounds to her back. "I'm working on this case, and it's heartbreaking. The girl was shot so many times." According to sources, a local resident walking their dog reported hearing gunshots early in the morning between approximately 2:15 and 2:30 a.m. Initiating an investigation, police immediately gained access to the rented apartment where Ellie Costel lived. Although the victim's phone was missing, her Apple Watch was discovered in the room. Witness interviews revealed that a few days before the incident, Ellie's parents had visited her from St. Louis, and she had shared with them how eagerly she was looking forward to the start of the new academic year at the university and had no regrets about staying on campus for the summer. Data from the Apple Watch also showed that after a phone conversation with her mother, the young woman sent several messages to someone named Brandon Thiesfeld. Upon examining the messages, detectives learned that 3 months prior to the incident, Ellie had shared shocking news with Brandon. Since Brandon was the last person known to have communicated with the victim, he became a subject of interest to the police. Further examination of their messages revealed that Ellie and Brandon had been in an on-and-off romantic relationship. Brandon Thiesfeld, a tall, dark-haired young man with an athletic build, was also a student at the University of Mississippi. He hailed from Fort Worth, Texas, and was raised in a well-mannered family. In 2016, as a freshman, Ellie met Brandon and immediately fell for him. The young people started dating, but they never officially declared themselves as a couple. While Ellie's feelings for Brandon were sincere, he never demonstrated the seriousness of his intentions towards her. Ellie's friends reported that their relationship was not always smooth. They often argued, including in public. Ellie and Brandon would periodically break up, but then they would be seen together again after some time. On April 12, 2019, Ellie wrote to Brandon that she had taken a pregnancy test, and the result was positive, but she received no reply from him. She bombarded him with texts and voice messages, but her boyfriend ignored her. Exactly 3 months later, he finally responded, "I don't want a child at all. Seriously, it will ruin my life. I can't help you with this, and I don't plan to. It's still very early. Just take a pill or make a doctor's appointment and deal with the issue." Ellie, deeply in love, desperately wanted to meet in person to discuss the situation, but Brandon continually refused. On the fateful Friday of July 19th, Ellie went to a local bar with her friends. At 11:52 p.m., surveillance cameras captured her leaving the bar. She got into a taxi and went home. About 30 minutes later, she received a call. It was Brandon. At 1:58 a.m. on July 20th, Ellie got into Thiesfeld's car for her last ride. They headed to an abandoned fishing camp by Sardis Lake. According to police reports, the drive down the dark road to the location was supposed to take about 45 minutes. Witnesses reported clearly hearing gunshots in that area between 2:15 and 2:30 a.m. Investigators contacted Brandon Thiesfeld on Sunday afternoon and asked him to come to the station to talk about Ellie Costel. He found some convincing reasons to avoid coming but assured the detectives he would meet them on Monday at 8:30 a.m. On Monday, July 22, 2019, after Brandon Thiesfeld failed to appear at the police station, investigators began to track his phone. Location data showed that Brandon was heading to his home in Fort Worth, Texas. Authorities issued a bolo be on the lookout for his pickup, which had a distinctive license plate with TAC 3. They also alerted all nearby police stations, and the suspect was arrested when he stopped at a gas station in Memphis. 2 days later, 22-year-old Brandon Thiesfeld was placed in a local jail and charged with homicide. Thiesfeld's lawyer and father claimed he was innocent. As the Oxford community grappled with the violent loss of one of their own, Ellie Costel's death quickly captured the nation's attention. Reporters, eager to learn more about the student and the person charged with her death, flocked to Oxford from across the country. Brandon Thiesfeld insisted on his innocence until the end, but the evidence against him was more than sufficient. During his arrest, a gun matching the caliber used in the shooting near the lake was found in his possession. His car contained stained clothing, later determined by forensic analysis to be bloodstains belonging to the victim. It was established that after July 12, Brandon had left Oxford to go home to Texas to retrieve his father's gun, allowing the prosecution to argue that the act was premeditated. His internet search history contained queries such as abortion services and abortion pills. It was later found that each time he agreed to meet Ellie, he canceled at the last minute or failed to show up without explanation. His search history also included queries on how to avoid punishment for a crime, how to conceal a crime, and how to use a weapon. A letter addressed to his parents was discovered in Thiesfeld's apartment, stating, "I am not a good person. This is not your fault. Something in me just doesn't work. I've always had terrible thoughts. I've always had these feelings. I just felt out of place. I think this is the end for me. I'll either go to jail or die. I know I'll get caught." On August 30th, 2019, a grand jury charged Brandon Thiesfeld with the murder of Alexandria Costel. Yet again, he refused to accept responsibility for the incident. Brandon faced the ultimate penalty, capital punishment. However, the trial was postponed due to the widely known restrictions in place at the time due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On August 27, 2021, when the process resumed, Brandon Thiesfeld, advised by his lawyer, pleaded guilty to mitigate the potential punishment. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In his final statement, Brandon apologized to Ellie's parents. "My actions have forever changed your life and the life of my family. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. I pray for God's forgiveness, and I hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me too," he said. Ellie Costel, Ellie's mother, did not accept Brandon's apology, stating that he should spend the rest of his life in prison and that every time his cell door slams shut, he should remember the heinous act he committed. Investigator Jared Bunderin eventually disclosed some already known facts about such a brazen crime to the public. He explained that Ellie had told Brandon she thought she was pregnant. Brandon didn't want her to keep the baby, and the couple had many arguments about it. Although Ellie wanted to meet in person to discuss the situation, Brandon refused to do so until the day of the incident. Intent on questioning Brandon, the police asked him to come to the station for some inquiries. However, the suspect seemed to resist and continued to make excuses for not being able to come in. Alarmed, the police began tracking his cell phone and realized that Brandon was heading to his home in Fort Worth, Texas. Immediately after locating Brandon, authorities alerted all police departments in the vicinity, and the suspect was arrested when he stopped to refuel at a gas station in Memphis. Upon his arrest, authorities found blood on him. Moreover, a pistol was found in his truck, the caliber of which matched the weapon used in Ellie's murder. Although Brandon insisted on his innocence and claimed he had no part in the incident, the police ultimately charged him with the crime. 5 days after Ellie's passing, normalcy had yet to return to Funky's bar, where surveillance cameras had captured her leaving shortly before midnight on July 19. Interviews with witnesses, who were among the last to see Ellie, revealed that the manager had recently installed a camera right in front of the bar. A bartender, who preferred to remain anonymous, mentioned she had been friends with Ellie since school. Taking a break from her duties, she found the words to describe her friend. "She always smiled, she just lit up the room. She had a smile from ear to ear," she said. "Ellie was the kind of person who greeted everyone. It's just really sad. She was too kind," she said, looking away as the colorful disco lights danced on her face. "We're going to miss her." Ellie's teacher and friend, who taught the Introduction to Retail course, Morgan Hall, learned about the passing of her student the following Monday. She was shocked. "You never expect something like this to happen in Oxford and its surroundings." During the interrogation, Morgan mentioned the last time she saw Ellie was around 1:15 p.m. on July 19th, when Ellie submitted her test. "She left, and I think that evening everything went downhill," she said. "Ellie was a sweet girl, very quiet, and I liked having her in class," Morgan stated. After hearing about the student's demise, Morgan immediately went to the administrators to figure out the best way to deal with the situation. According to her, the university had students involved in suicides and fatal accidents, but this was something new. Morgan Hall briefly mentioned Ellie's passing in class. Counselors were ready to assist and were available on campus during that period. Anyone who wanted to postpone their final exams for a few days could do so if they needed time to grieve. "My heart goes out to her parents and all her friends," she said. "Parents shouldn't have to bury their children. That's not how it's supposed to work." As it turned out, Ellie Costel, in her need for support, had told friends that she was pregnant with Brandon Thiesfeld's child. "Her sisters knew she was pregnant and that she had told Brandon," said a classmate. "He was very upset about it, about how it would ruin his life and future. He was angry that she wouldn't have an abortion," she continued. She said, "No, I don't believe in that." Another friend mentioned that Ellie tried to end her pregnancy through unhealthy methods like long walks, drinking a lot, and using forbidden substances. "She was 17 weeks along. She was struggling with it. Brandon knew about it, but he was seeing someone else. He wanted her to end the pregnancy. I think morally she didn't want to," said Ellie's close friend. "He was terrible, and then she would break up with him, or he would break up with her in anger and then come back to her saying, I'm sorry, and she always took him back." Ellie Costel's shocked friends and classmates struggled to cope with the news and paid tribute to their friend on social media. "It's just hard for me because when I see her face, all I can think about is what she went through, what she thought, what she said her friend Anna Pascoe. It's very, very difficult." On Twitter, one of Ellie's classmates wrote on July 23 that for years they had to listen to Ellie discuss in detail the issues between her and Brandon. He pursued her for many years, using her for his own interests. "During that time, I spent countless nights holding Ellie, wiping her tears as she cried over this monster for many years," said the now-deleted post. "You deserve hell, a disgusting excuse for a person." Rex Ravita, a former dorm neighbor of Thiesfeld's, shared in an interview that the 22-year-old was a daddy's boy who had been seeing Ellie Costel off and on for many years, just for the sake of not being bored. "I genuinely believe he emotionally manipulated her into believing he loved her just as she did him, and I think he kept her on the hook until the very last second," said Ravita. Old Miss student Rex Ravita, a former dorm neighbor of suspect Brandon Thiesfeld, later described the alleged perpetrator as misogynistic and arrogant, stating, "I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He was very much a daddy's boy, always had to mention his father's money, how his dad could get him out of anything. Just that kind of attitude all the time. Any vulgar comment he could make, any crude remark towards anyone in our dorm, he got away with." On Thursday evening in her hometown, in St. Louis, a memorial service was held for Ellie Costel. At the request of the Costel family, no public statements were made in Oxford about memorial events. Only black ribbons encircling the majestic white columns of the women's houses, including Alpha, where Ellie lived, served as a reminder of the tragedy. The young student's demise unsettled the entire state. M. Cunningham, a resident of Oxford, mentioned that the case had caught everyone's attention on campus. "This is the biggest news in town since football season for a long time," said Cunningham. "It's just terrible." He expressed hope that the case could be resolved soon so the Costel family could find peace, despite the deliberate withholding of crucial facts for the sake of investigation confidentiality. Some news agencies conducted thorough investigations and reported that surveillance cameras captured Costel on film early Saturday morning near the location where her body was found. They reported seeing Ellie Costel with a man who appears to be Thiesfeld at a 24-hour store in the Harmontown area. Arafat Nabe, who has owned this store for about 10 years, mentioned that police officers came to the store on Sunday and asked to review the surveillance camera footage. Nabe said that the investigators did not explain why they were there and took some evidence with them when they left. According to Nabe, video footage is erased every 72 hours, so there's no way to go back and see what the cameras captured. The business owner stated, "We've never had any problems or violent incidents here. This is a small town, it's quiet. Everyone knows each other. This is just madness." The Lafayette County Sheriff's Office long refused to release any additional information about the progress of the investigation or to give interviews to the media. Kennedy, the Lafayette County coroner, mentioned that there's a reason officials are not saying much. "This isn't a story that everyone will see until it reaches court," he said. "Certain delicate details in this case are tools to ensure that the person who committed this act is brought before court, convicted, serves the appropriate sentence, and is held accountable for what they've done." Kennedy said the media attention on this case has been overwhelming, but it doesn't change the nature of his work. "Every case I handle is important," said the coroner. "I try to give the same attention to every family who's lost someone. They've lost someone they loved." Michelle Miller, also involved in investigating Ellie Costel's case, raised questions about missed warning signs in relationships and whether her demise could have been prevented. Brandon Thiesfeld was charged with the crime. He faced the death penalty after being accused of Ellie Costel's murder and alleged abduction. Despite delays caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, justice was eventually served. In August 2021, he pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and received a life sentence. Judge Kelly Luther sentenced him to life imprisonment, and he will have the possibility of parole when he turns 65. Brandon Thiesfeld is currently incarcerated in the Mississippi State Penitentiary in Sunflower County, Mississippi. At the trial, when the verdict was read, Brandon Thiesfeld showed some emotion and sincerely admitted to his involvement in the murder of Ellie Costel. He acknowledged his guilt in the death of Alexandria Costel and was very emotional when he apologized to both her family and his own. A significant fact in this case was the finding of the forensic examination, which established that Ellie Costel had never been pregnant. We are left to speculate and ponder why a young and promising student at a popular university, who could have had a happy and fulfilling life, fabricated the existence of a non-existent child and spoke about it to all her friends for 3 months. It seemed she sincerely believed in it and thought that this news would melt Brandon's heart and make him belong only to her. Unfortunately, a miracle did not occur. Her parents and friends are still mourning their dear Ellie. Someone is a robber, and a pawn shop. Someone's robbing the pawn shop, and my parents got shot. Where is the robber? He's right here, right now. Where are your parents? They're dead on the ground. Come here quickly because I'm afraid. The police immediately rushed to the scene of the crime, hoping to save 9-year-old Andrew and his 14-month-old sister Naomi. An unknown man had committed a ruthless attack on the priest and his family, leaving no traces behind. The criminal made it one of the detectives' most challenging cases in their careers. Fortunately, they managed to find witnesses who had seen everything. Their testimonies helped uncover the truth about what had really happened to the Hawkins-Smith family in 2013 in Danville, Kentucky. 35-year-old priest Michael Hawkins-Smith, who had previously worked as a manager at a local pawn shop, had to take full control of the pawn shop due to the former owner's health condition. As a former priest, Michael had always been honest with people. He easily found common ground with others and was always willing to help. When he decided to get married, no one doubted his choice. Angie was his first love, and everyone saw her as a very sweet and kind girl. Michael literally worshipped the ground she walked on. When the couple had children, their relationship became even stronger. Together, they were a very happy family. As the Hawkins-Smith family expanded, so did their business. The pawn shop, ABC Gold Games, and more became a successful family venture, attracting regular customers like broker Dan Smith, with whom they often conducted business on Fridays. Life seemed perfect for the Hawkins-Smiths until one day in 2013, when an unknown man decided to disrupt their peaceful existence. 911, where's your emergency? Someone is a robber at a pawn shop. Someone's robbing the pawn shop, and my parents got shot. Where's the robber? He's right here, right now. The robber, does he have a gun? Yes, he shot my parents. Okay, can he see you? I'm in the back right now. You're in the back. The robber is at the front of the store. Yes, but I don't know if he's here or not, but come quickly. Where are your parents? They're dead on the ground. Come here quickly because I'm afraid. Please hurry. Okay, they're coming. 6 minutes after the phone call, police officers arrived at the scene of the crime. When they entered the building, their attention was immediately drawn to a large, bloody trail, which led them to Michael Hawkins-Smith. Moments later, they found his 38-year-old wife, Angie, and on the other side of the counter, they discovered the third victim of the crime, 60-year-old broker Dan Smith. All 3 victims had gunshot wounds to the head and torso. A few minutes later, officers found Andrew Hawkins-Smith and his little sister Naomi hiding in a closet. The officers' accounts indicated the unimaginable horror these young children had endured. Suddenly, the 9-year-old boy and his 14-month-old sister were left orphaned, having lost both parents. Upon examining the crime scene, police found 14 spent-pointed-to-caliber shell casings and 3 intact bullets, along with a briefcase that belonged to Dan Smith. The victim's personal belongings and all the cash in the register were left untouched, suggesting that robbery was not the motive for the crime. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras in the pawn shop, posing a significant obstacle to the investigation. The police had no choice but to rely on finding potential witnesses to the crime. An employee of the nearby Rainbow Cleaners was able to describe a car that had parked near the building that morning. It was a silver minivan driven by a large man with a thick beard. While one group of investigators searched the surrounding area, another informed the closest relatives about the tragedy that had befallen their loved ones. Michael's parents found it difficult to accept the circumstances that someone in their right mind could wish harm to their children. Nevertheless, they tried to find any positive aspect in the situation, and the fact that their grandchildren had survived could not but rejoice them. If it hadn't, had it not been for Andrew, Naomi might not have survived. Soon, the tragic news reached the daughter of the third victim, Dan Smith. He was involved in buying precious metals and skillfully adapted to the specifics of his work, easily finding common ground with different people. His business involved handling large sums of cash, sometimes exceeding hundreds of thousands of dollars. This led the police to consider the theory that Dan Smith himself could have been the primary target of the criminal. Tracking the man's movements revealed that, before he arrived at the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop, he had visited Lawson's jewelry store in Harrodsburg, located 10 miles northeast of Danville. In the jewelry store, investigators found a surveillance camera positioned on the far wall to capture every visitor entering and exiting the store. They hoped that the recording would help them determine if anyone had been following Dan Smith. Smith entered the store at 8:16 in the morning, and there were no other customers in the building at the time. He was carrying the same briefcase that was later found at the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop. After greeting the woman behind the counter with a smile, he headed to the back of the store. Sometime later, Dan Smith reappeared on the footage, coming out from the back of the store, saying something to an elderly woman who had just entered, and then immediately leaving. It was a typical day in the life of the jewelry store. The external camera recording showed nothing suspicious. The police were left to helplessly monitor the man, who had no idea he would soon be at the center of a tragic event. Meanwhile, 9-year-old Andrew Hawkins Smith was taken to the police station to give his testimony. Andrew described how he had been at the pawn shop with his parents when Dan Smith arrived, carrying a bag full of money. While his father and Dan were talking, a stranger entered and immediately demanded they hand over the bag. According to the boy, Dan Smith immediately handed over his briefcase, after which the stranger shot him. My father asked him to stop, but he also shot him with a pistol similar to the one I play with, Andrew said. Meanwhile, his mother instructed Andrew to take Naomi to the back of the store and hide in the closet. Andrew took his little sister and hid. It was then that the criminal aimed the gun at Angie. I don't know who he is or why he did it, but it seems to me that the reason was money, the 9-year-old boy concluded. He described the stranger as a very tall man with a blonde beard that looked fake, matching the description provided by a witness from Rainbow Cleaners. To follow all possible leads, the police's next step was to thoroughly examine the business run by the Hawkins Smith family. It turned out that the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop had another owner, Steve Devine. While he usually attended Friday deals with Dan Smith, he was absent on the tragic morning of September 20th. This information raised concerns, making determining his whereabouts a top priority. Steve Devine explained that he had developed an allergy that morning and was forced to cancel all his appointments, a story confirmed by his wife. The alibi, and the fact that Steve Devine did not own a silver minivan, helped to rule him out as a suspect. He also explained why there were no surveillance cameras in the pawn shop. According to him, the security system had been removed by the previous owner, Kenneth Allen Keith, and the new owners had not yet installed a replacement. 48-year-old Keith, like his deceased friend Michael Hawkins Smith, was a priest. Pastor Keith sold the pawn shop when he was diagnosed with brain cancer, but he remained the owner of another similar establishment, Gold Rush Buyers, in Pulaski County, neighboring Danville's Boyle County. Michael's family revealed that he prayed for his friend every evening, hoping for his recovery. The friendship, which began when Michael worked at a youth church camp, had lasted for 15 years. The Hawkins Smith family always held Pastor Keith in high regard, and for their son Andrew, he was like a beloved uncle. With no significant leads, investigators decided to try their luck in finding possible street surveillance systems near the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop. They found a camera on the office building of the real estate company Danville Rentals. The surveillance footage captured a silver minivan at 8:45 in the morning, but the image was too blurry to identify the license plate or the make of the vehicle. Once again, the police had to rely on the witness's testimony from Rainbow Cleaners, which described the car as an old model with a distinctive square body shape. The car in the video clearly showed a square rear bumper that matched this description. The color, type, and shape of the car all indicated that the police had found the criminal's vehicle. They continued to search for surveillance systems farther and farther from the pawn shop. At 8:17 in the morning, the camera at the local Ephraim McDowell Hospital captured the same vehicle, and finally, investigators were able to determine that it was a silver Dodge minivan. Michael and Angela's family organized a candlelight vigil in their memory. Hundreds of compassionate people attended that evening, demonstrating the depth of love for their lost ones. Similarly, Like the Hawkins-Smith family, Dan Smith's close relatives were outraged that the whims of another had led to the loss of their loved one. Despite their grief, they chose not to let anger overshadow their other emotions and joined in the funeral proceedings. Meanwhile, the Danville Police Department appealed to the public for any information about the criminal or his vehicle. Immediately after this, on September 24th, the police received a call from Tracy Harrell, a pastor in Warren, Michigan. He claimed to be a friend of Kenneth Keith and mentioned that during their last conversation, they touched on the topic of the murder in Danville. At that moment, Mr. Keith seemed to change. Pastor Kenneth Allen informed his friend that on that particular day, he was driving to Danville for medicine for his wife. He also expressed a sense of guilt for what happened, as he had given Michael Hawkins-Smith the opportunity to become the owner of his former business. Keith put forward the theory that Dan Smith himself could have been the main target of the attacker. Keith explained that Dan would come to him every Sunday to pawn all his gold, always carrying large sums of cash with him. Keith speculated that someone might have tracked Don's route and ultimately targeted him. But there was more to the story. As it turned out, the pastor's relationship with the Hawkins-Smith family was not as everyone had believed. Between you and me, brother, they were crooked people. They went into it with the whole point from day one to take over that business from me. These words raised suspicions, leading to Pastor Keith being added to the list of suspects. To verify his alibi, investigators decided to review the surveillance footage from the Good Neighbor Pharmacy, where, according to the pastor, he bought medicine for his wife. At 9:24 in the morning, a man entered the pharmacy, indeed, Pastor Kenneth Allen Keith, but he looked nothing like the man who had committed the triple attack just minutes earlier. He was not wearing a green jacket or a beard, which were distinctive features of the assailant. However, this did not rule out his involvement in the attack. There was a 7-minute gap between Andrew Hawkins-Smith's call to the police and the pastor's arrival at the pharmacy. The police decided to check if it was possible to travel from the crime scene to the Good Neighbor Pharmacy in such a short time. They found that the trip took about 5 minutes in total, so it was plausible to commit the murders, quickly get into a car, and reach the pharmacy to establish a solid alibi. The key clue was that Pastor Keith had an unregistered 2008 Dodge minivan, which was silver. However, all the evidence found was circumstantial, and it was not enough. For an arrest, investigators turned to Tracy Harrell to participate in a series of fake phone calls aimed at the suspect. Luckily, Tracy agreed. During these calls, Pastor Keith finally revealed his true feelings towards the Hawkins-Smith family. When somebody's been murdered in such a heinous way as what this was, you want to make them, out to be saints. I understand that, but between you and me, brother, they were crooked people. Is that right? Tracy asked. They went into it with the whole point from day one to take over that business. I don't mean to speak ill, no, Keith continued. In fact, yeah, I can't tell nobody none of this because what does it make me look? Yeah, it makes me look like. Keith trailed off, but it was clear what he implied. Then, what everyone had been waiting for happened. Keith began discussing details of the case that had not been made public. I would be but I would, that part. Baby, give, Keith mumbled. Following that, Pastor Kenneth Keith explained that he left Danville and returned to Somerset. He then took his car to the car wash to prepare it for a planned family vacation. At 10:50 in the morning, Keith was seen on camera walking down the hallway to the cashier's counter with a noticeable smile. It seemed clear that he was not involved in the dreadful crime that occurred earlier that morning. The external camera footage covering the parking lot showed Pastor Keith leaving the car wash in the same silver Dodge at 11:25, matching all the images previously obtained from various surveillance systems in Danville. At that point, they had enough evidence to arrest the suspect. He was offered a polygraph test to prove or alleviate his involvement in the pawn shop crime, but his response was rather unusual. Keith stated that he would not be able to pass the polygraph successfully because, during his military service, he was tasked with eliminating 3 individuals. The investigators obtained a warrant to search Kenneth Allen Keith's pawn shop, where they discovered a fake beard and a significant amount of cash. The police could not find any legitimate explanation for how he acquired most of the money. They also found bundles of bills wrapped in a ribbon with the name of the bank that issued them, revealing Dan Smith as their client. Further investigation revealed that the money found in Keith's pawn shop had recently been withdrawn from the account of the deceased broker. Additionally, several .22 caliber casings were found in Keith's pawn shop, and, According to ballistics analysis, they were fired from the same weapon used to shoot the parents of young Andrew and Naomi. Based on all the evidence found, Kenneth Allen Keith was charged with 3 counts of deliberate homicide and first-degree robbery. It turned out that Pastor Keith believed that Michael Hawkinsmith and Steve Dine had conspired to get rid of him from the business. Knowing that Dan Smith carried large sums of money, Keith decided to exact his revenge on the day of their planned meeting at the pawn shop. Keith aimed to mislead law enforcement into thinking the crime was motivated by robbery. In reality, Michael Hawkinsmith and his partner, Steve Dine, had no involvement in the imagined conspiracy against Keith. During the investigation, no evidence of discreditable activities by Michael Hawkinsmith and Steve Dine was found. On September 20th, the criminal arrived in Danville in his silver Dodge Caravan. He circled the pawn shop for a while until he noticed Dan Smith's car parked nearby. The first victim was the broker himself, followed by Michael, and then Angela Hawkinsmith. The pastor then took all the cash from Dan Smith's case and calmly left the crime scene, stopping at the Good Neighbor Pharmacy to be captured on its surveillance cameras and secure an alibi. His decision to go to the car wash was another attempt to remove traces and destroy any evidence that might have been left on his vehicle. In 2017, just before the trial, Kenneth Allen Keith pleaded guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Before the trial, investigators obtained medical documents from the Veterans Hospital and discovered that the pastor had never had a brain tumor. How could someone who seemed so spiritually inclined commit such a heinous crime? Furthermore, how is he going to live with the knowledge of what he had done? March 14, 2003, The Hobbit Pub, Southampton, England. On that evening, everyone at this pub was relaxing. Among them were a girl named Hannah Foster and her friend. Both of them were having a great time, and when they felt it was getting late, both friends left the pub by 10:50 p.m. Since it was quite late at night, Hannah Foster's friend caught a bus from a road named Portswood and headed home. On the other hand, Hannah started walking home because her house was just 800 meters away, roughly 0.5 miles. 3 people lived in Hannah's house: her father Trevor Foster, her mother Hilary Foster, and her younger sister Sarah. The Fosters were early sleepers and early risers, so they usually went to bed early. They assumed that their daughter would come home, eat, and then go to bed on her own. However, when Hannah's mother woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, she couldn't find Hannah anywhere in the house. Normally, it wouldn't take Hannah more than half an hour to come home, but now several hours had passed. Hannah's mother, Hilary, called her daughter, but Hannah wasn't answering any calls. After this, gradually, Hannah's father and younger sister also came to know about her disappearance. Following this, Hannah's father, Trevor Foster, called the girl with whom Hannah had gone to the Hobbit pub the previous night. She told the same story that I've already told you. After this, Hannah's family also tried to find her themselves, but by now it was already 10:30 in the morning, so Hannah's father started to worrying a lot about his daughter. Because of this, he went to the Southampton police station and filed a missing person report for Hannah. Now the police began investigating the missing person case from their side and first traced her phone. The good thing was that Hannah's phone was active, and the police traced the phone through the mobile towers. Naturally, the location of Hannah's phone was showing approximately 20 to 25 miles away from her home. The police reached there within an hour. At the location, the police found Hannah's phone at the city's recycling center, and along with the phone, they also found Hannah's bag there, but Hannah herself was not found. On March 15th, Hannah was also extensively searched for, but her whereabouts were not discovered. As they continued the search, March 16th arrived, and the Southampton police received a call from an anonymous man from the outskirts of the city. He informed them that he had just seen a girl's body in the bushes. A police team was dispatched to the location provided by the man. Since the previous day, the police had been searching for Hannah Foster, and they also had her picture. Therefore, the police first compared Hannah's picture with the discovered dead body, and they believed it to be Hannah Foster. Subsequently, Hannah's family was also summoned, and upon seeing a member of their family in this condition, they became quite emotional. Nonetheless, the body was then sent for a post-mortem. The police had to wait for several hours for the report. However, when the post-mortem report arrived, it stated that Hannah was first raped and then murdered by strangulation. Some traces of the killer's semen were found on Hannah's clothes, and this made the police believe that the case would be solved soon because DNA would be extracted from the semen and matched with the database to find the killer. But the police's imagination proved wrong when the DNA sample of the killer was not found in their database. Anyway, here the police, losing hope, checked Hannah's call details, which led. The investigators took another step toward solving the case. Actually, Hannah had last called the emergency number 999 from her phone, and the operator had answered the call. The call lasted for 50 seconds. After that, the police reached out to the operator and collected Hannah's call recording from there. In addition, the operator said, "I kept saying, 'This is the emergency helpline. What's the emergency?' For 50 seconds, but there was no response from the other end. When investigators enhanced the recording of Hannah's call, they realized that she was sitting in a moving vehicle. Additionally, there was another faint voice with a South Asian accent. The man asked Hannah questions while she sat quietly, appearing scared and intimidated. After obtaining the call recording, the investigating team accelerated progress in Hannah Foster's murder case. Now, the police also checked all the CCTV cameras in the area where Hannah's friend had last bid her farewell and caught a bus. After scrutinizing several CCTV footages from that road, the police eventually narrowed it down to 7 suspect vehicles. On the other hand, Hannah's parents were eager to see their daughter's killer brought to justice swiftly. They now also discussed these 7 vehicles in public. In the meantime, on March 26th, Hannah's parents talked to people through a local crime TV show called Crime Watch about those cars. As a result, it emerged that one of the 7 suspect vehicles shown on TV was a van belonging to their company, Hazelwood Foods. The supervisor, James Dennis, called in and said that the driver of this van did not have his own vehicle, so he also used this van to come and go from his home. Furthermore, that night the driver had gone to deliver on this road. The time and location of the van were exactly where Hannah had started to walk home alone. After that, the police got a good lead for the first time in this case. The man driving the van was named Maninderpal Singh Kohli. Upon speaking to the company's supervisor, it was found that on the morning of March 15th, Maninderpal came to work, but there were some marks on his face, whereas there had been no marks on his face the previous day, on the 14th. Additionally, on March 15th, Maninder only worked half a day and then took the rest of the day off, citing back pain as the reason. However, it was only later discovered by the police that Maninder hadn't returned to work since that day. Now, hearing the whole story, investigating officers, along with forensic experts, arrived at Hazelwood Foods. Subsequently, the van driven by Maninder was thoroughly examined by forensic experts, and some traces of semen and blood were found in his vehicle as well. With all this evidence, such as Maninderpal's disappearance and finding semen and blood in his van, all signs pointed directly at him for Hannah's murder. However, apart from this, the police once again scrutinized Maninderpal's van through CCTV cameras. It became clear from the CCTV footage that Maninderpal had taken his van to the recycling center on the night of March 14th, near where Hannah's body was found. His van had also passed through that road. Maninderpal had now become the prime suspect for the police. Therefore, the police embarked on the search for Maninderpal and first went to his home address, obtained from the sandwich company where he used to work. At his home, Maninderpal's wife and 2 children lived, and his wife was a UK citizen. However, upon reaching there, the police learned something that completely changed the course of the case. In fact, Maninder's wife revealed that he had actually left for India on March 18th because his mother was very ill. After learning this, it became imperative for the Southampton police to apprehend Maninderpal in the Hannah Foster murder case, but it was equally challenging the case further when a blood sample was taken from one of Maninderpal's sons and the DNA was extracted. It matched the DNA found on Hannah's clothes and inside Maninderpal's van. Since a son inherits about half of his father's genes, the DNA of both the father and son is approximately 99.99% identical. This confirmed that Maninderpal was indeed the real culprit. Afterward, the police from England contacted India through the government. Since Maninderpal's ancestral home was in the city of Chandigarh, India, assistance was sought from the police there. Subsequently, the Chandigarh police obtained the address of Maninder's house and reached there. The police discovered that Maninder had come to meet his mother a few days ago, but after staying there for 3 to 4 days, he left. Since then, he had not contacted his home. The police also learned another piece of information from Maninder Pal's family. When he was in England, he used to wear a turban and keep a beard, but when he came to India, he got a clean shave and also cut his hair. By this time, Hannah's parents had also found out about their daughter's killer, and they were waiting for him to be caught. However, the Chandigarh police were not giving this case much priority. By now, the news of this case had not even appeared in the Indian media, so the general public didn't know much about it. As time passed, there was not much progress in the investigation. A considerable amount of time had passed, so Hannah's parents took it upon themselves to catch the killer. About 15 months after their daughter's death, on July 10, 2004, they came to India. At this time, they were only in India for 10 days. They went straight to Chandigarh and spoke to the local media, appealing to catch their daughter's killer, Maninder Pal. Hannah's parents had separate pictures of Maninder. In one photo, he had a beard and a turban, while in another, he had shaved his beard and cut his hair. It was easy to identify Maninder through these pictures. Hannah's parents waited for a few days, but then they decided to go to Delhi because national and international media offices are located there. They made a promise that they wouldn't rest until Maninder Pal was brought to justice. After this step by Hannah's parents, the news of their daughter's murder spread throughout India. Within 24 hours, the headline of every newspaper and news channel became Hannah Foster and Maninder Pal. Hannah's parents also arranged a free hotline so that anyone with information about the murderer could call this number. Meanwhile, the Southampton police announced through a news agency called The Sun that they would give 5 million Indian rupees to the person who provided any information about Maninder Pal. By now, the news had spread like wildfire throughout India. Then, on July 15, 2004, a car driver residing in the city of Darjeeling, in the state of West Bengal, India, called a retired police officer, whom he knew. The police officer had already retired, but the driver told him, "There is a man who has been living here for a few months, and his appearance resembles that of Hannah Foster's killer as shown in the news. He started appearing here shortly after Hannah's murder." Upon hearing the driver's words, the retired officer immediately set out to see this man. The officer remembered Maninder Pal's face because they had been following the case through the news channels. When the driver showed the police officer the man, the officer was quite surprised. He immediately contacted the local police, and the local police caught Maninder Pal on a bus going from Darjeeling to Nepal. The police found out that Maninder Pal was planning to flee to Nepal after seeing his face on TV channels and newspapers. Additionally, they learned that Maninder Pal had changed his name to Mike Davis in West Bengal. Besides, there was also a woman with Maninder on the bus, and it was revealed that Maninder had remarried. After coming to India, Maninder was arrested and brought to Delhi. During his custody, over the next few days, Maninder confessed to his crime. He then told the whole story of how he murdered Hannah that night. The story was something like this: "Actually, on the night of March 14, 2003, I was parked on that road, drinking in my van where Hannah passed by. When I saw Hannah, bad thoughts started coming to my mind. Afterwards, I forcibly kidnapped Hannah and placed her in the van. Although Hannah requested to be released, I paid no heed to her request. In the meantime, Hannah also called the emergency helpline number, but due to my presence, she couldn't say anything. This led the call operator to believe it might be a misdial. Later, I took Hannah to a deserted area and raped her. However, after committing the crime, I realized that if I let Hannah go alive, she would go to the police and file a complaint. Therefore, I strangled her to death and disposed of Hannah's body, where it was found on March 15th. The next day, I took half a day off from work under the pretext of back pain, but I had Hannah's mobile phone and handbag with me, so I dumped them in a recycling bin at the city recycling center. Afterwards, I went to one of my friends and asked for some money on loan because I had to go to India to meet my sick mother. However, my friend didn't have as much money as I needed. Then, I came back home and also told my British wife that my mother was sick in India and that I needed to go there and required some money. Understanding my need, my wife talked to her father, and on March 17th, my father-in-law lent me some money. The very next day, I caught a flight to India. However, the excuse of my mother being sick was just a pretext. In reality, I had come to India to escape from the England police. Upon arriving in India, I went to Chandigarh, my ancestral home, and met my mother, but here I completely changed my appearance. After changing my appearance, I went to Darjeeling and, after some time, I changed my name and married another woman there, where I started living thereafter. Now, because no one in India knew about Hannah Foster's murder nor about Maninder Pal, Maninder wasn't caught for 15 months. But then, when Hannah's parents came to India, only then was Maninder caught. Anyway, after that, he was brought to Delhi, and then on July 28, 2004, during an interview with a news channel, he confessed his crime on TV. He, Maninder, said loudly, "But upon the whole incident, while confessing, I deny and say that on that night, I had drunk a lot. I didn't want to kill Hannah, but when I moaned to her, Hannah started threatening to complain to the police. Although I threatened her a lot, she didn't agree, which led me to kill her. I brought my all bad light, but my mother is very ill in India. I want the. It is very, very v upon me that, you know, that beer was, that might was." However, in August 2004, Maninder Pal changed his statement. He said, "I didn't do all this willingly, but it was done to me forcibly." After this statement, Maninder was placed under judicial custody in Delhi, and then the process of extradition to Britain began. This process took about 3 years, but finally, on June 8, 2007, the court granted permission for Maninder Pal to go to England. Once in England, Hampshire police arrested Maninder. Then, Maninder's blood sample was taken and it matched 100% with the DNA found from Hannah's clothes and semen obtained from the van. After that, on December 10, 2007, the trial began in the Winchester Crown Court. Here, Maninder appealed not guilty to all the charges against him. Maninder said, "That night, some criminals broke the window of the van and threw Hannah's body inside the van. Now, because they were drunk to trap me, those criminals forced." Maninder said, "They forced me to rape Hannah, and they may have even forced me to kill her." Even in court, Hazelwood Foods Company supervisor James Dennis testified, "But I borrowed $16,000 from James, and he is also under the misconception that I am having an affair with his wife. That's why James is targeting me." Maninder also said, "Maybe James hired those 3 men to frame me and forced me to commit this crime on the night of March 14th. However, in the end, when the police investigated all of Maninder Pal's statements, they all turned out to be lies. Finally, on November 25, 2008, all the allegations against Maninder Pal were proven. After that, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. He will be imprisoned without parole for at least 24 years. At the time of sentencing, he was 41 years old, and he will remain in jail until 2030. Of the 5 million rupees reward offered for catching Maninder Pal, 367,000 rupees were given to the taxi driver who first informed the police about Maninder Pal. The money was divided among 12 other people because, besides the taxi driver, Jason Lepia, those people also played an important role in solving this case. However, Jason used that money to buy land and then established a school for disadvantaged children on it, named the Hannah Memorial Academy in Foster's memory. Then, in 2006, when Hannah's parents visited Darjeeling and learned about this, they were very pleased. When these people returned to England, Hannah's parents started a registered charity to help Jason along with other people. This charity now greatly helps Jason Lepia's school. So, friends, this was the complete story of the Hannah Foster murder case.